Welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and this podcast, it exists for you. Whether you're a music lover, an educator, a choir member, each week we bring guests to the show to help explore what matters in music. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to episode 76 of the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and today I'm bringing you a dear friend and fellow Savannah local musician, Jackson Evans. Jackson is an incredible guitarist, teacher, and just all-around human. We sat down to record a lecture for my rock and roll class, and I wanted him to give a really great story of the history of guitar because that's one of the most asked questions. And why should a choral person do that when I could sit down with a guitarist and get the scoop? So that lecture was the bomb. Maybe I'll release that at some point on here. But after that was over, we were talking about the power of the hang. And I started asking questions. What can we as educators learn thinking about the guitar side of things? How can we approach working with guitarists in the choir settings better? What do we need to know about guitar to really instill that love and passion educationally into our students? So this conversation was really organic, incredibly fun, and it was recorded live in Jackson's living room. Now, I strongly encourage you to follow Jackson and his awesome wife, Maggie, on social media. They did these incredible live concerts during the pandemic, and I am notorious for popping around town to try to find them in gigs because they are absolutely the bomb, and they know tons of other great musicians. But all this to say, look how connected our music world is. How lucky are we to call this our career? I hope that you enjoyed this conversation brought to you by our friends over at the Crimson Choral Company with Jackson Evans, all about guitar and what we need to know to work with guitarists. Today on the Music Ed Matters podcast, we are welcoming a special guest, jazz guitarist Jackson Evans. Hello.
Hey, I am a jazz guitarist. In fact, my handles on all my social media are Jazz Guitar Jackson.
Yeah, they are now that I think about it. Mm-hmm. What all socials do you do?
Instagram, Facebook, little bit of YouTube, but I'm not super active there.
You mean you're not like on TikTok yet or Snapchatting or any of those?
I just turned 40.
Twitter?
I think I am on Twitter, but it just like auto posts my Facebook stuff, and I don't ever check it.
I don't really understand Twitter either. Yeah. But jazzy Jackson Evans, how did you get into jazz guitar?
My grandpa was into jazz, and he took me to see my first guitar teacher playing a concert at the university near our house. And I've always been prone to go against the mainstream. All my friends were into rock and roll. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I want to be a jazz guitarist because that's not cool.
Okay. So then what was your first guitar?
My first guitar was an acoustic that my uncle had. I expressed interest. I actually wanted to be a drummer, but my parents aren't idiots.
No one wants to drum in their house.
Yeah, they were like, my dad actually was a rock and roll drummer coming up.
Oh, wow.
And so they knew it was noisy and they didn't want me to play drums. So I expressed interest in the guitar. My uncle had one laying around, an old beater, and I picked it up and started taking lessons. My first guitar teacher, incidentally, ended up being, he left for grad school and has become a quite notable jazz guitarist since, and he's a Benedetto artist.
That's so cool.
And then I went to college studying under his father.
Okay.
So we like to all keep it cleose in the jazz guitar community.
It is.
There are fewer of us than you'd think, and we all know each other.
I love that. Okay, so you play jazz guitar, and we have Benedetto on your shirt if you're watching the YouTube.
Yeah.
What do you do there?
So I am the customer service and sales representative technically, but I do a little bit of everything. I'm involved in the marketing. The whole company is only 12 people. There are 3 people up front, our bookkeeper, and then me and the president of the company, Howard Paul, are the face of the company. So we do everything from answering the phone, sometimes sweeping the floors, answering the door. We go to the trade shows. We're both professional performers, so we spend a lot of time with our artists. You know, it's a cool side project of the gig. A side effect of the gig is that I get to play with my heroes sometimes just because I have their phone number and I can call them for gigs.
That's really cool. So you do that as your day job. You gig all over Savannah and Hilton Head and the surrounding areas.
Yep.
What's the coolest place you've gigged?
Coolest ever.
Yeah.
Well, I lived in China for 2 years.
That counts. That counts. You played jazz guitar in China.
We were me and my wife Maggie were at a residency at a jazz club in China. We actually went over first. She's an artist by her trade, so we went over first for an artist residency she was doing, and got a gig while we were there, which got us into the local jazz scene. And another club invited us back for another year contract. So that was pretty crazy. The Jazz Corner, my Monday night gig, is pretty special. It's a world-renowned jazz club, and to be lucky enough to play at a place like that once a week is like a dream come true.
That is so cool. Okay, so you gig, you have a day job playing with guitars.
I'm also involved with some education.
Okay.
Speaking of the Jazz Corner.
Okay.
Besides, right out of college, I taught private lessons extensively in community classes, for about 10 years. That was my main focus. After China, performing took off, and my gig schedule didn't allow me to teach as much. But I have a passion for teaching.
Yes.
I love the power trip of having someone that wants knowledge, and you're the one that gets to gift it to them. That's a weird thing to say, but all the teachers out there are like, yeah, I get it.
Yes, I totally get it.
Yes. So now I'm on the board of directors for the Junior Jazz Foundation, which is the Jazz Corner's not-for-profit. And I'm also on the faculty of the jazz camp in Hilton Head that they sponsor every summer. So for a week, we take over the Hilton Head Christian Academy, and some of the greatest jazz musicians in the world come together to teach 100 of the most fantastic, eager kids about jazz and how to play jazz.
From all over the country? All over the world?
Yeah, last year there was a kid from Alaska, or 2 years ago. Last year there obviously wasn't a camp, but yeah, as far as Alaska. So all no foreign kids yet.
Okay, but educator, jazz guitarist, guitar specialist, maker, talker, sells, all the things. I think in an earlier episode you said, or we recorded a lecture for class, you said you were an overall guitar nerd, and I love that.
That's my official title. I am a guitar nerd. I love to talk about guitars. I love to play guitars. I love to dream about guitars. I love everything guitar.
I am very thankful that we're having this conversation. So for the rock and roll class, you gave us a great history of guitars, and maybe I'll release it on the podcast at some point. But today we're talking, what does a teacher need to know about guitars? A choir teacher, a classroom teacher, like a general music teacher, a high school. What do you need to know about guitars in our profession? If you could tell me what I need to know.
The first and most broad thing I would say is what I mentioned before. It is a easy instrument to learn, a very, very difficult instrument, if not the hardest instrument to master. So it's a very broad spanning instrument. But in terms of the ease with which you can get started, the quickness with which you can get started, as an educator, it gives you a quick in. If you have antsy kids who don't have the patience to get an embouchure, that don't want to spend a month learning a 5-note D flat scale on a trumpet, you can get them in the guitar class, and it will get them focused fast. Vice versa, one of my biggest mentors in general is my father-in-law, Eric Nelson, plays with the Lightwood duo out in Utah. He was did grad school at North Texas, highly educated, made a really amazing career as a middle school band teacher, the consummate professional educator. Always had a guitar class, and the reason he cited that he had a guitar class, one of the reasons is that the kids who need music in their life but maybe are fringe, aren't going to be the band kids, aren't going to be the choral kids. It gave them a place to go, gave them an access to something that was artistic, without fitting the box of the traditional education system.
I love that. That's such a great way to see other people's stories and helping them fit in non-traditional boxes.
Exactly. And I see that in the great educators. They can identify we always joke with band teachers that, the percussionists, they're fidgety. They all have ADHD. So your percussion, you see the ADHD kid, and a band teacher knows, like, put that kid on a snare drum, he's going to eat it up.
Right. Finding the personality and where they'd fit. That is so cool. Okay, so guitar classes in schools. What about a teacher who's listening and who doesn't know anything? You had given us some really great people to look up on YouTube. Who are some of the great YouTube channels we could go to just learn about the history and the basics of guitar?
I'm not super hip on that.
You were just talking about it. So
the
history of rock and roll, guys. You gave a whole big series of people that we could go watch on YouTube.
Oh, gotcha. Just in general. I thought you specifically meant for guitar lessons and stuff.
There's guitar lessons. You can go Google
anywhere on YouTube.
Google that. That. But some really good people that educate you about the guitar, so it becomes a really meaningful experience.
Joe Bonamassa is a great blues guitarist. I mentioned Norm's Rare Guitars as a cool, they're coming from a sales perspective. They're a vintage store in LA, but they have videos of all sorts of heavy musicians that stop by to play their old cool vintage guitars. Nice. Emerald City Guitars is another one that always has really cool demos of just great players playing cool old vintage instruments. That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Those are helpful, though. Places to just get the kids excited and to see the professionals.
Right, exactly. And there's concerts, you want to see Pink Floyd at Pompeii. That'll get you excited about guitar.
Right.
You were bringing up earlier when Bob Dylan went electric. That's all documented in 8mm film that's been converted and put on YouTube. Monterey Pops, Woodstock. All that's there. You can find all sorts of really cool rock and roll history on YouTube.
I think that's such a cool way too to segue to meet that fringe crowd, like you're saying.
Right.
Incorporate some history into it. So what else do you feel like us as teachers need to know about guitar other than having a place for it in your curriculum or in your school setting?
It's not just a pop instrument. You can have ensembles. You can take it that step further between strumming chords and singing along. Or you can use it as a tool and start there. A lot of middle school programs now are incorporating baritone ukulele, which is tuned to the top four. The four highest strings on the guitar are the same tuning as a baritone ukulele. So for a sixth grader who maybe doesn't have the dexterity, or you could even get down into fifth grade, you can start off with those chord shapes that are 1 or 2 fingers and start to build the dexterity. Get to 7th, 8th grade. Move them over to a full 6 string. By the time they're in high school, then you can start to work on guitar ensemble and ensemble playing, note reading, all the things that the band kids get that the traditional guitarist might not have. Putting it in an academic setting, there's just so much footing and so much music there that you can create.
That is such a great idea. I love this. The starting young with different instruments and moving them in. So the baritone ukulele.
Right.
Okay. And the soprano ukulele is tuned differently.
It is tuned differently, but it's not unuseful. I mean, obviously a lot of classrooms, I'm sure, Mandy Manson, she uses ukulele like crazy, and that's central to a lot of music education, especially with younger kids, because the timbres are going to match the higher voices.
Yeah, it matches their voices. I love how we're talking timbres too. Okay. So thinking about ensembles, giving the other students and fringe students an opportunity to be a part of the ensemble using YouTube. What other techniques or resources or ideas would you want teachers or musicians? Like, what happens if I have a piece in choir that has a guitarist? What are some tips for working with the guitarist?
Speaking, if you play a little guitar, it'll help a lot. One of the struggles, there's a long-standing joke. Do you know how to get a guitar player to stop playing?
How?
Put a piece of music in front of them. Guitar is usually taught visually first.
Okay.
We learn by chord diagrams, which you play a little guitar, so you know what I'm talking about. On a piece of paper, it's 6 vertical lines, which represent the strings, and then the horizontal lines represent the frets, and then there's dots.
Right, tab.
That's not tab. That's just a chord diagram.
That's just the diagram. What's the tab?
The tab is the next step towards music notation, where you have 6 horizontal lines, the way you have a staff.
That's right.
And then the numbers go on top of the line to indicate the fret that you play.
So diagram, tablature, reading music.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So tablature mirrors music notation fairly closely.
Okay.
I frankly wish it didn't exist.
Really?
Yeah, I think that guitarists should be held accountable to become musicians.
I agree.
I'm an unpopular teacher sometimes. I always take the hard line. I don't know if you know this, but I taught choir for a year.
Really?
It was the worst job I ever had because of me, not because it was at a school where that had a reputation for kids could get in that got kicked out of other schools. So it was already a very challenging setting. I was there to teach a group guitar class.
Okay.
The headmaster, who was a former band teacher, said, as long as you're here, let's make it worth your time and throw you on a choir class.
Oh, lovely. Take the
no idea what I was doing. They ate me alive. But it was, of course, it was all ninth grade girls. So they tore me into shreds.
You survived.
I did survive. But the one or two times I was effective, it was because my dog is barking in the other room.
Carter, come here, buddy.
This is Carter making his appearance.
Hey, Carter. I know you just want to be on the podcast.
We shut the blinds so you couldn't bark at the dogs walking by, but you found an open window.
There must be a dog.
Leave it. Do you edit these?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's fine.
Carter, leave it. Go lay down. Out of the kitchen. Go.
Good boy.
Go lay down. Out.
This is why we don't have children. That's dogs.
Yeah, we treat him like a child. I'm glad to hear you edit these.
Oh yeah, no, I edit all of them.
Okay,
it's actually part of the fun, I think. Going back and editing and having like the ability to splice things and see how it works.
Oh, good.
I enjoyed that part.
Nice.
I didn't think I would.
Oh, I'm glad you do.
But yeah,
we're gonna have to edit Carter out now.
I don't mind. We'll have a little bit of barking in there. Do you want to pick up that whole story in the middle of that story?
Yeah. What was I saying?
So you were talking about teaching your choir.
Oh,
and
yes.
You can pick up anywhere you want.
Yeah. So I'm teaching ninth grade girls, and they're destroying me. The one or two times that I was effective were when I would get them singing something and they'd make a mistake, and I call them out on it. They didn't like it. Right. I'd say, that's wrong. That sounds crappy. Fix it. And they'd say, you said we were bad. And I said, I did. Do you think it was good? And they were like, well, no.
Right.
I'm like, okay, let's make a plan for how we can make it better. And it's not always a popular line. And that's how I feel about tablature is it's a crutch that I think disconnects guitarists from other musicians and takes out a part of their ability to communicate with other musicians. I don't have control over that. It exists.
Yeah, it does. So, it exists. And it might reach somebody who is on the super fringe.
Right.
And bring it to music.
And the way it gets used mostly is it's songs are written in tablature on the internet. So you can look up any song in the universe and learn to play Stairway to Heaven or Dust in the Wind or whatever. It's all tabbed out. So for the teachers in your audience, learning a little bit about tablature, learning, how to roughly read it or interpret it, learning how it relates to music, knowing that you can Google tabs or tablature in order to find the music for the song for this guitarist that's going to accompany your choir now, will get you a lot further than trying to put a score in front of him or her.
Okay, so if you're about to do a song that needs something, I know one time we booked you to play Blue Skies, and I think you just made it up the whole time because that's a familiar chord.
Right. And that's a song I know. It's part of the jazz literature, and being a professional musician, I'm used to form and I can adjust if you guys repeat a section or come back in the bridge. But if you pull your high school kid that knows how to play guitar in to accompany your choir, he may not have those skills or she may not have those skills. And to accommodate those, you'll need to know a little bit about guitar notation. Which is essentially lead sheet notation, will get you somewhere. If it's strumming chords, you may have to teach a guitarist in that position how to deal with repeats, first and second ending codas, that sort of thing. Or end up writing it long form and say, just keep going. You may have to teach them how to count. The first time I played with a conductor, I was in college, and this is actually a fun story
I'm
because
really excited to hear it.
I tell people now, they ask if I can read music, and I'm like, I'm an excellent reader for a guitarist. You put me with a classical musician, and they will read circles around me. The week I learned to read music for real, I could figure it out, because I had a good teacher, and but I had a good enough ear that I could also figure out stuff that way. I played Les Mis in a pit, and it was a short run. We had, I think, 4 rehearsals, and then a weekend of performances with a matinee. So 3 performances, 4 rehearsals. And I had never played with a conductor before, and had never read from a part before. Thrown under the bus.
What happened in that first rehearsal? I'm stressing. My hands are getting sweaty for you.
I'm blessed with a work ethic.
Okay.
So I showed up as prepared as I could. I was getting up. The rehearsals were at like 4 or 5, if I recall, and I was getting up at like 5:30 or 6. Reading, picking out the parts, reading, trying to read the music. I did that for 4 days straight. Okay. The rehearsals would end at like 11. So I was going on like 4 hours of sleep and playing guitar 15, 16 hours a day for that week. And the first time, the first rehearsal, I'm just playing away, playing my parts. And the conductor's like, what is going on? He's panicking. I think he might have actually reached for a knife. I don't know, but he was very, very angry. And I shrunk, and he basically told me how to follow a conductor. He's like, you got to watch my hand. This is time. You play your notes with this. And I didn't even know that.
Because you hadn't had like a guitar ensemble.
No, I hadn't at that point. And baptism by fire. That's how it goes. I got thrown into the pit, literally.
Literally into the pit. Wow. Okay. Have you played pit since?
I've done a couple. I haven't done any for years. Probably the last time I did a show was subbing for the Savannah Theater. Okay. And it's been a long time since I've done that. And they're great people to work with. I don't know if you know any of the singers from that show, but they're a lot of fun. They're really great folks, and they would mess with me. I'm on stage for that show, right. Playing, and they'd have sections where the guy cast would be singing something while the girl cast had their backs to the audience, and they'd like start to turn my pages and mess with you that way. Yes. Hazing the sub.
Right. Oh my goodness, that's fun. Okay, but now you play mostly by yourself or in small bands?
Yeah, most of what I do now is ensemble playing at jazz clubs or restaurants that have stages. When I started working for Benedetto, the thing that changed is I don't do a lot of private events anymore. Okay. Which people think I'm crazy, because those tend to be where the money is. If you're a professional musician playing weddings, private parties, whether it be with a dance band or solo or whatever that is, that's where the money is. But because I'm able to subsidize my performance career now, I look for more artistic outlets, and outlets where, for me, the connecting with people is what really matters, be it the restaurant staff or the audience. We perform every Friday and Saturday at Rancho Alegre, the Cuban restaurant, and Maggie's been on that gig for 12 years now. 12 years. Yeah, I've been doing it, I think, 3 or 4 years, and Juan is like a father figure.
He's like family.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's a family business anyway. So Juan's granddaughter Noe takes care of Carter when we go out of town for bike races.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's like, that is that's the dragon that we chase, or those sort of human connections, which is, to bring it full circle, which is the point of music. That's the reason I am a musician, is because I was touched by music in a way that pulled me in closer to people and connected me with friends through pop music, and connected me to ideas and culture through jazz and classical music. And it's making those relationships grow through the art that drove me into the profession. And so when I have a chance to follow it up from the stage side of things, that's that's the dragon I'm chasing.
Because you never know what person in that audience is going to be the one person that gets touched by
Exactly. And that's, and when it is, it's it's moving and elevating and fulfilling.
Do you know that there's a children's author named Mo Williams, and he published a book this past year called Because, and it tells the story of because Franz wrote music, so-and-so was inspired to write music, and because so-and-so heard that music, they decided to start an orchestra, and because all of these people practiced for hours and hours, they were asked to be in that orchestra, and because the people came and made sure that the performance hall was clean, and because there was a librarian to give all the instrumentalist music, and because there was a conductor who took a train to rehearsal, and because there was someone who opened the door and gave ushers people to their seat, because of all this, some girl's uncle got sick and she got the ticket and she got to come and hear that piece of music. And because of that, her life was changed. And she then wrote her own music. And because of that, and it just touched the line.
It's local economics. It's that dollar bill gets passed to the cab driver, gets passed to the restaurant server, and it's a long form way of creating community.
I love a long form way of creating community. Let's say the person listening right now has someone in their class or in their ensemble that is thinking they want to go into this career path. What do they major in college? What are some ways to start getting in the gig world? What are some suggestions looking back that you'd want to tell yourself in a younger version?
The best advice I ever got was from Maggie's dad. As I said, he was one of my mentors and a fine musician, but he said, master the art of the hang, which I think was a paraphrase of something Dexter Gordon may have said.
Okay.
And that is echoing what I just said, be a participant in the community. Go hear your teachers play, be in the audience, hang out after the gig and hear what they have to say. Know the musicians in your area, integrate yourself into the community and culture of it. From a scholastic perspective, there are tons of guitar programs now. There's many programs also focusing on music production, music business. Songwriting is a craft now that's taught at the collegiate level. So there's tons of resources. The advice that I give to most students is find a small school with a great teacher. If you want to learn to be a jazz guitarist, or if you want to learn to just be a great guitarist, find the guy who does what you want to do at a very, very high level. There may be 2 or 3 of them, and if there are 2 or 3 of them, pick the one at the school with the least amount of music majors. There are a lucky few who can go to North Texas or North Florida or Berkeley or New England Conservatory or Manhattan School of Music that at 19 or 20 or 18 or 19 are ready for that experience. But the vast majority of the students I come across that think they want to go to Berkeley need a small school with a focused program and will succeed because of that. And I take that from my experience. When I got to college, I was an okay blues and rock guitarist. I was a soil chemistry major working in a Forest Service soil research lab.
Wow.
And I decided to do, at the same time as my chemistry degree, a 2-year associate's degree in guitar performance for fun, because they had it and I was into guitar. I got A's in all of my music classes and I got C's in all of my chemistry classes. And I told Mike Chris Jansen that I wanted to be a guitar major. And he said, okay, I'll let you give it a shot. What's your goal? I said, well, I guess I'd like to be able to go to grad school. And he knew, he's a brilliant educator. He's written hundreds of books. He knew that challenging me was the way to go. And he says, well, maybe if I'd gotten you a few years earlier. And it was like fire. Yes. It was like, I will show you. And by my sophomore year, I had a scholarship. And that's my scholastic story is that I went to a small college. It was convenient. I lucked out that I had a world-class educator there. Now there are ways to locate those educators, and had I decided to quit it all and try to go to Berkeley or something, they would have gladly taken my parents' check. But would I have been lost in the crowd and learned what I needed to learn? I don't think so. I wouldn't have had professors that recognized the way I needed to be challenged. I wouldn't have had professors that had the time to sit and practice with me. You know, those essential interactions that you get from a teacher are different at bigger institutions.
And that's so full circle, talking about the community.
Right. I mean, it's a thing I've thought a lot about the last several years. I was watching a live stream last night from Smalls Jazz Club in New York. And this guy, Lucas Pino, was playing sax. He's a bad dude, such a great player. He did a concert in Savannah for the Coastal Jazz Association. Now they just go by Savannah Jazz, and stayed with me. And we had such a deep, heavy hang. We drank a lot of bourbon, and we got into this community stuff. And he changed my way of thinking from craving a bigger stage, rather than chase a date at the Monterey Jazz Festival, to focus on my local community. And even though he's in New York, that's what he's doing. You know, the family at Smalls is a thing. The family at Blue Note is a thing. The musicians in Brooklyn are a thing, and you build and support within that community. And so the last couple of years, I've been really focusing on the Savannah, Hilton Head, the regional, Atlanta, just the regional stuff, making real friends, real connections, deeper musical connections, deeper friendships, including the service industry part of it, because they're part of they're part of the prescription of what, you know,
right, they're the ecosystem.
Yeah, they're part of the ecosystem. That is exactly the word I was looking for. So having my server friends and my bartender friends and my management friends and my hotel friends and my jazz guitar friends and my saxophone friends and my piano friends and my rock and roll friends, creates this ecosystem that gives my job support, and it gives my job opportunities, and it creates a synergy within the community that betters everybody, I think.
I feel like what you just said is so profound, especially for those of us in the education world, because we so often feel like we're on our own island in our schools or in our world.
Right.
But stop chasing like the next big concert, the next big award, the next big thing. Get their ego out of it and invest in the singers in front of you, the school community, your community. Precisely.
That's Eric Maggie's dad's focusing on middle school band and always having a guitar class. He's a notoriously low ego guy, and a brilliant educator. He easily had the qualifications to go teach at Juilliard or do anything like that. But he knew where his talents were needed, and took the ego out of the equation. And now he has a sea of musicians that have studied under him that are out there carrying a legacy, and many of them have been touched by his role in it.
It takes one positive person to make an impact. It takes one music, because you play guitar at that one place, at that one dinner, that one person heard it.
Right.
It's so important. Oh, this is great. Okay, last question.
Okay.
The one thing that matters, the one thing you want them to walk away. I feel like what we were just talking about is my one thing. Right. But what's your one thing you want them to walk away from this episode with?
It's a bit of an echo of what I've been saying, but it's that music matters in a way that is not selfish. A lot of musicians I've seen at some point in their career go, what am I doing? Why I should be a doctor, and I'm being selfish and just making music. And I would say always remember that the music is an art that from all the struggles of life, and it's really, really important.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. After the conversation with Jackson, I feel like I had a really incredible mental shift in regards to the power of hanging. I am notoriously a scheduler, an A-type personality, and to be able to pause and reflect on the power of the hang, of being present to really get to know people, to go off of the schedule for a second. It has been incredible. I've caught Jackson and Maggie numerous times all over town since the recording of this, and I've met tons of new friends because of it. And the spiral effect that started from this conversation has led to a brand new organization underneath the umbrella of RISE, my community organization here in Savannah. So you never know what's going to happen when you sit and talk to someone, because there is so much power in music. How awesome is that? Hey, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. I also really hope that you know that you, my friend, you matter. We all know that music matters, especially the power of the hang and working with guitarists and embracing all of the sounds that we get to have in our musical universe. And I'll see you next time on the Music Ed Matters podcast.